It is recording now. You're welcome.
It's very nice to be together today. My name is Chris Hromalik, and this is Spanish, and I'm just going to do this. My name is Chris Hromalik. I'm a assistant professor of Spanish, and this is my instructor in design. My language is literature department here in Sweden. I'm also project manager at Universal Design for Learning at Sweden Project. And I look forward to the opportunity to share some basic information about Universal Design with you today. We should be able to download the PowerPoint presentation from Google Drive. I will say aloud the URL to you, just because it is time right now. I'll be able to put it in the chat over later on. It's https://bit.ly/UGL, all caps UGL, hyphen. Capital BW, capital E 2024. So again, it's bit.ly/ all uppercase UDL, hyphen, uppercase WB, hyphen, and then the numbers 2024. The objectives for today's session, by the end of the session, you should be able to define universal design, universal design for learning, accessibility, and usability. You feel to differentiate principles of universal design for learning, and identify strategies that you can apply to your classroom, that's your courses. One strategy you can use on Monday, one you can use later this semester, as well as one you can use possibly as far as next semester as well. So in session, we're going to basically go over the why, the what, and the how universal design for learning. So the first question we begin with is why UDL? Why would we want to consider the universal design? First, because we want to be able to guide instructors in the creation of more inclusive student experiences. So we're going to attempt to have a more inclusive student experience for the students in our classroom, and we're going to consult the universal design framework. In the United States, 1 in 4 U.S. adults has a disability according to the CDC. And 19.4% of undergraduate students, 11.9% of graduate students, self-identify as having a disability in the United States. And of course, students that self-identify as having a disability, we're well aware of the fact that there are many students who do have a disability that do not self-identify as having a disability to an Office of Disability Resources. So there are many students in our courses that do have a disability, but do not let the Office of Disability Resources know and do not come with CB accommodations. Another reason for the universal design framework is learning variability. And each of us has different interests, different practices for learning. If I were to ask you something you learned in the last year, and I would ask each person in this room, each person who's online today on Zoom, what are the different something that you learned over the last year? My guess is that each of us would be something that's different. We might think that some of the things each of us things are interesting, while other things not as interesting. And so we are different in how we learn. And a one-size-fits-all approach may not all learners in our classrooms. Then we move to slide 8. It says what documented average top rows. The method average basically if you Google search method average top rows on YouTube, you most likely find the video, and if you're going down the PowerPoint, is directly to the video on slide 8. Basically, just in the interest of time, I won't go to the video, but Mr. Rose tells a story of basically a series of fighter pilots in the U.S. Army, who, were when they were moving fighter planes and they were beginning to test flying with these planes for the first time. It turned out the results of these new planes, compared to the older planes, the results were much worse than before. It turned out that the reason was they designed the planes for the average pilot, and they thought that by designing the average, they would be able to then accommodate all people who were flying the planes. It turned out that they ran a study of 4,000 fighter pilots and measured them on 10 dimensional size. So looking at their height, their weight, their arms, their legs, torso. It turns out that none of the pilots were average at all 10 dimensions. So by designing for the average, they designed no limits. They resolved the problem by going back and making more flexible cockpits for the fighter pilots. So much like in the seat that's on the overhead right now, where they have you can adjust the seat back moving forward, and back and forward, you can adjust the steering wheel. The equivalent of that in a fighter plane as well too allows for there to be more flexibility, and therefore the fighter pilots who are not average all 10 dimensions of size are going to then be able to use the lens. So the same thing goes for our classrooms as well too. That is, I need to be average. We're not going to be able to reach all our students because those students are not going to be average on all dimensions, but we really want to consider how we more flexible in our classrooms. So the move to slide number 9, mention universal design framework. It's a way to provide flexibility and one inclusive student experience. But what is the universal design framework? As we move to slide 10, I'd like to start first with universal design, UD. And universal design is a set of principles designed from start to be accessible and usable by all. On slide 11, curb cuts are a classic example of the universal design in action. On the left-hand side of the screen is a sidewalk that does not have a curb cut. It's a sidewalk that ends abruptly and has a sharp descent down. This is not going to allow access as someone using a wheelchair. I won't be able to ascend or descend on the sidewalk very easily. And so a more universally designed solution would be a curb cut. On the right-hand side of slide 11 is an image of a curb cut, which is a ramp that connects the top of the sidewalk down to the street below. And by having this ramp in place, by designing from the start to build the sidewalk with the ramp in place, we've now provided access to someone who uses a wheelchair. But they're also with universal design, also associated with universal design learning, that whenever we design for usability and accessibility from the start, we'll oftentimes provide benefits to others that we may not even consider during the design development process. So for example, the ramp has been designed with bumps, available bumps at the end, and these are to help someone who's blind to know when they've reached the end of the street. In addition, someone who is potentially on the stroller will benefit from help too. And for example, when my daughter was born and when we go downtown, we able to go on one of those other easily using curb cuts that were using the stroller. We went for a trip across the country and turned out there were some cities where there weren't nearly as many curb cuts instead of running downtown. So trying to cross the street with my daughter was much more difficult when it really wasn't curb cut available. And so by considering how we can hold universal design architecture for our products, we can then create a better experience for everyone. Another example, automatic doors. For example, in the image on slide 12, on the left-hand side is a button for automatic door. But automatic doors can also be beneficial for example, in the video on the right-hand side, we see this little machine luggage, heavy luggage to the airport. Benefits in having automatic doors. This is a more universally designed experience that allows for someone with a disability to be able to enter the building. But advantage benefits in having doors that are automatic. Same is true as slide 13, closed captioning. Closed captions are provided for individuals who have their parents to be able to have access to movies or television shows, but many of you may be using closed captioning right now on the Zoom meeting. And closed captioning will allow you to be able to eventually turn down the sound while this meeting is going on, maybe something else going on in the background, you're trying not to make a lot of noise for partners in the queue, the next queue, for example. You turn on closed captioning, meetings don't take part in this meeting. Or maybe you share on the closed caption and enable the transcript, which allows you to then be able to transfer later to be able to study this material later. If for some reason you have to leave the meeting from that. So everybody benefits from closed captioning and transcripts. So the idea behind this is to design from the start. Often design from the start as opposed to trying to retrofit later. So for example, we think in terms of universal design, in terms of architecture, retrofitting might be an example on the left hand side, slide 15, where we see a house, and this house was not built thinking about many people who are going to enter the house. And so we're just fine, the individual can walk into the house. But now this person's wheelchair, they've had to build a ramp, they've had to retrofit their house and make changes to it in order to be able to enter the house. And so now we have a solution that is very elegant, we have a solution that may have cost a lot of money, take a lot of time, a lot of resources. And so trying to retrofit later oftentimes make them less ideal solutions. However, if we consider designing from the start, as in, for example, the widgets on the right hand side of slide 14, where we have a ramp that leads into a library. And this ramp is the only entrance to the library, but is a more universally designed solution that's considered that many users will want to enter into this building. So, for example, some of the barriers to entrance might be that the person in the wheelchair may be a ramp to the building. It's also very helpful to someone who might need a handrail on the side, and someone who may need a bit of assistance having some additional in entering the building. This building is also considered whether they might be less slower. And so there's a very slightly fun. So that the idea would be that hopefully we have less bicycle left over time as well. That'd be easier to clear. So a lot of the various entries that they consider during the design development process, as opposed to trying to retrofit, like you mentioned, the ramp that leads to the house that's been retrofitted and built in later on the left hand side of the street. So what does this have to do with the classroom? We think about how we can use the universal design instruction, we'll consider the universal design framework. So the design framework based on scientific insight that helps us learn. And the idea is to design from the start to be accessible and usable, to consider barriers to learning during the design development process, and then seek to eliminate those barriers before we even get into the classroom. We have three principles of universal design for learning framework. The first, provide multiple means of engagement. Since learners vary in what interests them in the classroom, we want to consider ways that we can eliminate barriers to engagement by providing these engagement. Learners vary in how they receive information, and so we provide multiple means of representation. And learners also vary in how they express their knowledge, and so we provide multiple means of action and expression. The idea is, as we run on slide 16, and says, UDL equals flexibility. And if there's one word we take away from this presentation today, I would have you think about flexibility. And that's flexibility in how we present information, it's flexibility in how students demonstrate the knowledge, and flexibility in how we meet their interests in the classroom. We'll move to slide 17. It says with UDL, accessibility, and usability. I'd like to go over these three words and differentiate between the three of them as we move into discussing universal design for learning in a bit more detail. First, accessibility is the extent to which information can be received by all. This is when we think about, for example, a web page or a document. We want to make sure that all of the information can be received regardless of the ability. We think about television shows, movies, etc. We want them to be able to be received regardless of ability. Next step, though, usability. The extent to which a person can accomplish a task using a product. I like to think of the three E's: easy, efficient, and effective. Whereas accessibility is simply ensuring access to information, usability is considering how we can make for an easier, more efficient, and more effective way for this consumer to use a product or a service or whatever it happens to be. So, for example, in the classroom, we can make an exam, for example, that they need to distribute out paper to students. We can make that Word document accessible. We can go back in and we can make sure that we heading structure, semantic headings throughout a document. We can make sure to add alternate text to images. And so yes, it may be technically accessible, but how usable is that going to be? If we want, for example, to have match exercise, it's going to be useful to have a list of words and then to prompts. It may technically be accessible, the information can be accessed, but it's not very useful. When you someone using screen reader, prompts back and forth, you can list of words and then the prompts. More usable is nice, or you can create that exercise rather than red space, and have the entire test with a red space, or it can be more accessible or useful also. Universal design theory, instead, seeks to design from the start to ensure that a wide range of people can access and use something. So, if you're thinking about when we think about university design and instruction using the university design framework, the idea is to consider barriers to learning from the start, and then to design to eliminate the barriers. So we discussed a lot, and we learned. Let's think about how we can now apply new development in our courses. We can spend the rest of the time going through the how the university design framework. Let's move to slide 19. It says at the top, 2 steps to UDL. And I'll share with you 2 steps that you can use. And these 2 steps, they will sound simple, but they're certainly not easy. So certainly the difference between what's simple and what's easy. This is not easy, but I try to hopefully convey that in a simple way. Well, to first identify barriers to learning, and then design to eliminate those barriers. So we recognize that there are some symptoms of barriers. So for example, if we have a certain unit of instruction that we teach, maybe chapter 3 of the textbook, or we get to the exam again, and students just don't perform as well. Then we get some sort of barrier that is getting away with student success. If we receive questions from students, same questions over and over again, in one semester next, how do we take this assignment like that? Then we get some sort of barrier. So I want to consider what are the concerns students have. What do we get the same questions one semester next? Where do we see that students are less successful? And that's typically a symptom or barrier we want to consider eliminating through using the university system. Let's move to slide 20. So step 1, anticipate barriers. When I think about what might prevent learners from reaching learning before we even get to the classroom, you can consider barriers to engagement, or one of the things that might make it challenging to even get students' attention on their place and to keep their attention throughout the semester. Want to consider barriers to representation. Want to think about how students perceive information at classes. Is this information going to be acceptable to all our students? Is it going to be useful by all? Or are they going to be barriers to all students being able to take part in the course? And then we think about action expression. I think about how students demonstrate their knowledge. Could there be potential barriers to how students demonstrate their knowledge in their classroom? Are all students going to be able to use more materials to demonstrate their knowledge? Step 2, design instruction to eliminate barriers. And that's what we're going to discuss that's what we're going to present to you for the rest of the time. So here at slide 20, both the top step to design instruction to eliminate barriers. I'll share with you some strategies in this follow-up presentation. But I also encourage you to go to the UDL guideline page from CAST. And that's UDL guidelines, all one word, UDL guidelines, all one word, .cast.org. And from there, you'll find treasure trove information with the University of Learning Framework. And all of your learning steps that you can diving deeper into each of the three principles that I seems to be today. That's why I'm going to share with you just some basic strategies to get you started. The idea being that these are going to go out call the next steps. This is certainly not going to be everything you need to know in order to do these. What I'm trying to get is there's some strategies you can use. Focus something on Monday, to start the semester, focus something later on the semester, and focus something you consider for next fall. Before we begin, let's move on to slide 22. It's at the top, and word of caution. I encourage you to start with 1 to 2 strategies. Maybe that's something on Monday, maybe 2 things on Monday at most. Maybe 1 or 2 things you do later on the semester. Maybe 1 or 2 things you do in the fall. Don't try to do too much. Well, simply look to address potential barriers to learning. If we try to use 2 things, right? We try to use all 31 checkpoints to be able to learn in a single lesson. Images on the right-hand side of the screen. If you're on the right-hand side of the slide, there's an image where we see a few people in the front and they're sort of in focus. But then there's the rest of the city, and this is, I think, this is what I'm pretty sure, but I can't recall. I go back to where I got this from. The idea is you can't really tell. I'm guessing what city this is, but it's all very blurry. So some things are in focus, a lot of things are really blurry. The idea being that this is what's going to happen if we try to use 2 strategies. And we try to put all the much once per lesson. It's going to feel very blurry, both to us and also to the students. So just be very overwhelming. So, slide 23, let's talk about the universal design learning principles. Let's start with binomial means of representation, which is on slide 24. Again, so we're talking about binomial means of representation. I placed on the right-hand side of the screen the icon from the cast for binomial means of representation. It's a purple icon, so if you were to go to upl.cast.org, everything related to binomial means of representation, in other words, how we present content to students, it's all going to be in that purple color on the website. It'll all be under that title of providing most means of representation. Learners differ in how they perceive and comprehend the information presented to them. And so therefore, what I consider barriers to perception, barriers to understanding language and symbols, and barriers to comprehension. So how do we do this? Let's move to slide 25. I'd like to share with you what I call first steps. There's things we can do to provide all of these representations. First, I want to consider closed caption. When we upload our videos, for example, to Nato or to YouTube, here's your field. We have access to these services with our videos. They do provide a caption. And so I would recommend that after the caption is completed, you can actually go in, whether it means YouTube Studio or in Nato, and then you can fix any errors in the caption. It's especially important if you teach a skill that is very technical in nature, not technical vocab, that may not be understood as well by our caption service. And so closed caption, for the first step, if you have instructional videos that for something you created for your students, and you're not sure where to start with, what would you do to apply to start on grammar? Make sure to go back in. If you uploaded those to Apple, if you uploaded them to YouTube, go back in, check if the closed caption is correct, and make changes so that they'll be correct. Another first step, we add alternative text to images. So do a PowerPoint slide. Much like the PowerPoint that I'm showing you right now, there are images on the PowerPoint slide. You can, if you were to right click on an image, that will give you the option to view or edit all text. And you would just simply provide a very short, about 150 characters max, very short description of what is relevant information in that image. If somebody were not able to visually perceive that image, they cannot see that image. What is going to be a very short description of what's going on in that image? It's going to be relevant to the context that you're teaching. How might it be relevant to your course in math, your course in math, your course in Spanish, etc. A third strategy, if you've already considered closed captioning and alternative text images, the next step would be to upload your course materials to Squarespace if you haven't done so already. If you were to upload a PowerPoint presentations or Word documents to our place, things are better experience for all students. Especially important if we, many of us are new faculty, some of us are more veteran faculty. If we have the ability to be able to upload the PowerPoint presentation ahead of time, then that's going to provide a better experience for students. Think about a student who is blind with low vision and is using a screen reader in the classroom. It is a much better experience for them to have access to a PowerPoint presentation ahead of the classrooms, and to have access to those handouts before going into the classroom. We have a student who may find it challenging to be organized in the classroom. That student would then be able to print a notes sheet from the PowerPoint presentation and bring that with them to the classroom the next day. Student who, for example, when you're working with interpreters, then having access to PowerPoint presentations and handouts ahead of time, especially when there's specialized vocabulary in the classroom. And so if there is the possibility of uploading these materials ahead of time, it makes for a much better experience for all students. And of course, it would be good to pay attention to the online results. And so I'll demonstrate that this morning, but if we consider the online results, that will allow us to then make sure that we're providing accessible materials for our students, which is going to be, of course, very important for providing these students ahead of time. Then let's consider sharing content, considering how we can present content in smaller chunks, maybe with some practice. And then maybe considering how we can put together a course glossary. Maybe if you're teaching a course that has highly specialized vocab and a lot of vocabulary. For example, I worked with a faculty member who had a course in it was for physical therapy assistant. And there's a lot of prerequisite vocab in this second level course. There was a student that students knew. And it turned out that in many cases, some students need a little more assistance with vocabulary. So of course, glossary is a great way the students themselves put together. It wasn't the instructor providing, but the students each provided 2 to 3 words each in this course glossary. And over time, they developed a large course glossary that everybody was able to consult and able to use to study. So how do we actually do some of these things? If we wanted to add alt text to our PowerPoint presentations, in slide 26 right now. An example of this, what an instructor might be able to do is, for example, an instructor might include alt text for all images on PowerPoint. So as you're going through and you prepare your PowerPoint presentations, you want to consider, okay, I'm adding image to this PowerPoint. I'm going to add a text to it. Then when you're done, upload your PowerPoint presentation to Word documents to Brightspace. And then check the LI score before logging out. So if you were to do just these 3 steps, which is quite a bit, of course, I understand. But if you could just these steps, you're providing much more accessible experience for the students of your courses. So how do you do this then? First, when you add a new image to a PowerPoint presentation, you can right-click on the image, then choose either view or edit alt text, depending on the version of PowerPoint you're using. There'll be that little box that pops up. Then you simply add a very brief, again, fewer than 150 characters. So we're looking about the length of what used to be called a tweet. You know, something that's going to be a small description of what's in the image that's relevant to the context that you're teaching. So here, this is simply for someone to know that it's band drag heavy luggage. Then when you're done, you can upload your PowerPoint presentation to Brightspace. On slide 28, the left-hand side of the slide, there's an image that was placed on here. At the bottom, the left-hand side of Brightspace, there's the opportunity to add a module. So you just add a module, maybe it says instructional materials. You place all of your instructional materials in the organized fashion in that folder. And then, for example, for Spanish 101, the right-hand side of the slide, I just took a screenshot of some of how I organize my sub-modules, like day 1, day 2, etc. So the students can have access to each of their course materials. Now, on this image here of Brightspace, on the right-hand side, as you look where it says 01 subject 1, get to know each other, 02 subject 101, each of these files on the right-hand side, there's a green icon that looks like a little gauge, and that will move up and down depending on how well it passes the accessibility checker of ally. And so this is where you put it on out, you want to check the ally scores. And for example, if I take one where I got a document that says Spanish 101 title speak exam, fall 2023. And it's a PDF file, and it says here it doesn't have a title. So it's, it's pretty good in terms of accessibility, but they give it a 93% of a title. And what's nice about allies is we'll then tell you what we're going to remediate this. So what this means and how to add a title, or with the how to add a title button, I get something similar to the image on the right hand side, where it takes me step by step through how to add a title. You might ask me, for example, if I'm looking at a Word file or a PowerPoint file, or if I even have access to the original file. So this will give me step-by-step instructions for how I can, in this case, add a title to the PDF. So it does take a little bit of time to use this at first, but if you were to go through these 3 steps to add alternate text to images in a PowerPoint, upload that PowerPoint to Workspace, and then check the Alex score to see if there's anything else that can be done in terms of accessibility, you're going to be well on your way to having a much more accessible experience for your students. Now, what else can you do? If you have been working very well with PowerPoint's accessibility, you might want to consider chunking content. So typically when we think about chunking, we'll think about how we learn. We think about this idea that was the theory that we can only hold a certain amount in short-term memory and in learning process a very small amount of short-term memory. Think about like a phone number, for example. We can oftentimes remember those 7 digits of the phone number pretty well. We'll start to get into larger amounts of numbers. We might not be able to remember that as well. But when we think about a phone number as well, we start to chunk the phone number. We start to think about the fact that every one of our phone numbers in the studio will start with 315. And they'll all start with 312. We have these 2 chunks of numbers. You don't have to memorize 315 and 312. We just know we're calling something in Oswego. We have these 2 chunks that we already know pretty well. You only need to learn 4 pieces of information at the end, those last 4 digits. You can navigate the 315 chunk, 312 chunk, and those last 4 digits that we learned. And so the same thing. Typically, we'll think about chunks as being how we can provide organized bits of information to students. We want to help them both in terms of not providing too much to the cognitive overload, and also want to help to make information organized. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what to be a 75-minute lecture or a 55-minute lecture, and start thinking about 15-minute chunks with 10 minutes of practice usually. That good. So for example, you might start by presenting content for 15 minutes. Maybe there's a partner practice activity in debriefs for 10 minutes. Present content again for 15 minutes. Group activity in debrief for 10 minutes. As well as do something to close, maybe to enhance retention transfer at the end of the lesson. So in a 55-minute lesson, as opposed to a 55-minute lecture, you may then have smaller chunks with opportunities to practice in between. Or potential strategy might be a course loss, or maybe the instructor creates a Google Doc for a course loss group, and then students each have 2 vocabulary words and a definition per chapter. If you can offer extra credit, your student creates a filter deck with this vocabulary, and then shares it with the rest of the class. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, and this PowerPoint will be available. But I'm going to skip ahead. Right, we'll leave the action expression, but let's skip ahead. Slide 35. And slide 35 of the top says provide multi-means action expression. And we provide multi-means action expression because members are different in how they express their knowledge. We want to consider variables as well action, expression, communication, and executive functions. So what are going to be some of these strategies you can use regarding these action expression? Let's look at some first steps on slide 56. One of the first steps, when you consult with your ENT officer or to consult with the Office of Accessibility Resources about accessibility. It's especially important to think about new software or new hardware we're going to adopt for our courses. Your ENT officer is going to be the individual on campus who's going to help with accessibility of the software or information technology that you're seeking to adopt. So, for example, if you're looking to adopt a piece of software that you want to use with students, it's going to be important to consult with your ENT officer or the Office of Accessibility Resources before adopting that software to check and make sure that it's accessible. Now, if IT provides the software, well, that's one thing, it's already gone through the process. But if it's new software that you're looking to bring to the campus for the first time, that's going to be important that if you're going to require your students, we want to check to make sure it's going to be acceptable. If you're not sure who your ENT officer is, you can ask the Office of Accessibility Resources, and they will only find the ENT officer. Another way to provide multi-interaction expression is to simply provide a second option. Is it possible for students to complete assignment in a second way? Providing a model. So reaching out to a former student and asking the former student to share an exemplary piece of work. Maybe there was a student who submitted an A-level paper, and we may ask them to share their work with the future students. Through it, otherwise, and make sure that everyone can tell whose paper was, but then share that paper as a model for students. And it's especially helpful if they have a lot of questions semester after semester. How is it that you would like me to do this presentation? Or how would you like this paper to be done? Do you provide a model? Or a former student who completed a high quality assignment, you're going to cut down those questions by a lot. Now, I would recommend giving the absolute best paper, absolute best presentation that's ever been given. Because that sets the bar a bit too high. It's not what you're expecting of students. Why don't you give a reasonable expectation of what the level people would be? So next steps, you might consider estimating the time it takes. Complete readings or assignments, letting students know, of course, that there is at least this an estimate. That we all complete things in bigger amounts of time, but it does help students to know that there are going to be a certain amount of time that is going to be spent before you put quite a bit of time before readings outside of class. Even though some of them may take a little bit less time, some may take more time. The idea is just to help students to understand how they begin to manage their time. And formative assessment, which I'll mention in just a few minutes here, where we consider how we can provide opportunities for students to practice and get feedback and understand how to improve throughout the semester before getting to that summit and that a summary of the learning, get that final assessment. So first, we're thinking about providing a second option. An example from one of my own courses, where in online courses for Spanish, students writing compositions in Spanish in Microsoft Word. But the barrier that I identified was that some students are unable to write the diagrams, they're unable to write the accent marks on a computer sometimes. And so typically what would happen is I would set aside office hours for students to see me. It would take quite a bit of time. I would have special office hours with special appointments that create on Zoom in person to be able to help students just understand how to create the accent marks. And then we started having phones and other devices that students would bring in, mobile devices. They got to just be overwhelming. And so one student said they want can't just write it on paper, take a picture, and submit it to the same Dropbox. And this was alone. Actually, why can't everybody do that better? So then I decided that a good way to do it was to go about having two options for students. You can submit the Word document, or you can write the composition by hand, take a picture, and submit that picture to the same center Dropbox. For me, that all comes in the same place. For me, the learning objective in this case, what I'm hoping students can demonstrate they can do is write a composition in Spanish. It doesn't matter in my mind whether or not they can do it on paper or on Microsoft Word. So these two options still need that same learning objective for the course. Now, again, it's important to consider what is that learning objective? What is it we want students to be able to demonstrate they can do? In this case, if they're interested in how well they can write in Spanish, and they demonstrate the ability to write at the appropriate level, these two options into that. And the thing about it is it frees up a lot of time for me. I answered a few emails about how to write accent marks in Spanish. And I ended up cutting back on the number of extra office hour time I have to give at the semester. So having the second option can oftentimes make for a much better experience for not just the students, but also you as the instructor. Now, we consider formative assessment, how we can have some assessment throughout the semester to be able to provide feedback and help students to improve. One example list instruction might use formative assessment as well as a model assignment for a research paper in EPA format. When we consider research paper in EPA format, this has to be done a certain way. But how can we then provide some support to students throughout? So instructor might provide a model assignment for a former student. The instructor reaches out to a former student, has to share and analyze how to work with the future students. And so the instructor provides a rights-based model assignment. Then the instructor must stagger the due dates throughout. So for example, week 1, the composition is assigned, this research paper is assigned. Maybe in week 6, the annotated bibliography is due, and it's going to be 5% of the grade for the research paper. Week 10, the first draft of the paper is due. That's 10% of the grade for the assignment. And then 85% comes from week 14 when students submit the assignment at the end of the semester. The question I typically get on slide 39 is what if flexibility in assessment just makes it possible? And this idea of +1, Thomas Stoven, his mantra is +1. He says to consider thinking +1. And it's a great way to think about it. You know, like how can I have that +1, that extra, whether it's a different way of presenting information or different way the students can complete the side. But King Slump has said this, and I'd also, from my experience of backing member, +1 sometimes just is impossible. Maybe there's a department final exam or a department pre-sample in the semester, and everybody has to complete the same exam in the same way. So giving a second option just isn't possible. Or the assignment has to be done a certain way. I gave the example earlier of research paper in EPA format. Research paper in EPA format is a research paper in EPA format. So there's limited flexibility in terms of how that can be done. It just has to be done a certain way. Maybe there's a large class of students. You have 700 students in a lecture hall. Offering a second option may not be feasible. It may not even be possible to do. You may not have enough time in the day to correct that many assignments. Well, maybe there are accreditation limitations. So, for example, a student who is who has to demonstrate that they can assist a patient who's having a heart attack and be able to complete the process of saving their life in a certain time. This doesn't, you don't have unlimited time to do that. There's a certain amount of time that has to be done. And so there may be limitations in terms of what we can do in terms of accreditation, in terms of how students are assessed. So providing a second option may not be possible. So what I usually say, first of all, on slide 40, consider the construction measure. Think about what the learning objectives are. So you want to think about what we're going to know that students can do. And consider what they can do, not how they do it. So we can ask ourselves, are there other ways to reach the same learning objective? If yes, then we can offer a second option. But if not, in many cases in higher education, we can't just offer a second option that easily. On slide 41, we might want to consider flexibility in preparation instead. We be flexible in how we prepare students for the assessment. So, for example, if there's a department final exam, could you create a study guide for the exam? And maybe post that in Brightspace, share it with your colleagues. If an assignment must be done a certain way, could you provide check-in points? Much like we saw with the composition EPA format, that had a check-in point at week 6 and week 10, and then the final version week 14. If there's a large class of students, is it possible for a set of class notes used to maybe certain students that each individually be assigned to type up class notes, and then these would all be shared with a large class of students. PowerPoint presentation on Brightspace also provides that flexibility of preparation. Or maybe an exam, accreditation requirements. This is where exception videos have to trigger. So, for example, if nursing students are required to demonstrate that they can assist the patient having a heart attack, this is where having a test trigger, having some sort of a model that simulates a human could be provided so that students can practice over again to be able to be prepared for this accreditation requirement. Maybe there's other ways to review and practice to be prepared for these assessments that it just has to be done a certain way. So just the issue of that, real quick, we'll choose all things engagement, and then we'll begin to wrap up. So first, we provide all things engagement because learners are different from what interests them. So we seek to have various reading interests, sustaining students' academic systems, and then supporting self-regulation. So on slide 44, some of our first steps for providing teams engagement might include offering options. As I mentioned earlier, the idea of offering options is a way to provide multi-dimensional expression. But by providing options to students, we're also targeting this principle of providing engagement as well. By offering options, we're giving students autonomy and therefore providing a much more engaging, motivating experience for them. You can prompt students to set goals and prompt students to remember their goals too. You can offer opportunities to work in cooperative groups. We want to consider how we can provide authentic and relevant examples to students. Next steps might be to consider reflective journal assignments, such as a pre-journal reflection. And maybe consider if it's possible to offer the option for circularity in the classroom. Just an example of reflective journals and setting goals. We do maybe the instructor would assign 4 reflective journal assignments throughout the semester. The students will state their goals and how they reach them. And then there might be, let's say, 3 extra credit questions per exam at the end. The students can earn an extra 3 points on the exam. The first question might ask what goal or goals do you set for yourself in this course at the end of the semester? Do you feel on track to achieve your goals? Why do you think this is? And then what can you do between now and the next exam to get closer to or continue working toward achieving your goals? So the idea would be to have students think about what are their goals, what are their reasons for taking this course, and then to reflect and monitor their progress toward reaching the goals throughout the semester. Another example of reflection would be 3-2-1 reflection. And 3-2-1 can be 3 of something, 2 of something, 1 of anything else. So I'll give an example of one, but you can have 3-2-1 of something completely different. So for example, an instructor might assign 5 weeks. Every other week, you have to journal assignments. There's a choice of writing or reporting, and maybe they could report a video of 1 each assignments. And the 3-2-1 complements would be 3 things they've learned in the last 2 weeks, 2 ways of how they learned, their personal lives, then 1 question they still have. And then think about authentic examples. And instructor might share examples of how they have experience, such as in their course on building codes. They could experience examples of what happened when codes were followed and when they weren't followed. What are the things that can actually happen if you don't follow building codes? Engineering. You think about math and the application of math to engineering projects. English, the examples of the importance, right? And Spanish, maybe for example, common mistakes. There might be an experience with studying abroad. For example, as with many other people, I have made mistakes when I studied abroad. And so sharing some of these common mistakes might be a way to help us create a more engaging experience for students as well. And let them know that it is part of the learning process to make mistakes along the way. Slide 48, offering groups. Mentioned earlier, there was a structured group in their course, and interspersed practice activities between time that they were presenting practice to learners. These activities were done with cooperative groups. So the content presented, but then it was a partner practice activity for 10 minutes, with more content, and then the group activity, 3 or 4 students in a group, plus that for debriefing as well. So cooperative groups we worked in as well, and a more engaging experience for them as well. As we get to wrap up then, let's slide 50. Do you want to learn more? And we'll put that as slide 51. We're offering instruction to universal design for the workshops, through the universal design for the at student project, which are the project manager. The intro to the workshops, we're offering them over Zoom. We have 3 cohorts and we're offering them in different ways than we have previously passed out. February 7th, March 15th, Wednesdays from 10 to 11 a.m. Will be taught, that was by Jeremy Youngblood of University of Buffalo. For 17th, February 13th, February 29th, these are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 1 p.m. These will be taught by Dave Wool out of Schenectady. And then for 18th, February 19th, March 6th, Monday, Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. will be taught by Elsie Moreland, who's out of Impact State College. And so we have 3 instructors teaching courses that are all going to Zoom, and there's the opportunity to earn a certificate, credit badge from the Student Center of Professional Development. And also we'll have some webinars going on this semester, and we will focus this semester on neurodivergence in higher education. So February 28th, March 27th, April 17th, and May 15th, and 1 to 2 p.m. We'll have webinars available. And all this is available if you register online. This out just a little bit here, but you can register online. But that's okay. You can register online at www.suny.edu/VDL and www.suny.edu/VDL. And some additional resources from CAST on slide 52, UDL-guidelines.cast.org, UDL on campus.cast.org, and there's a free ebook registration required. I believe it's UDL theory and practice.cast.org. Here it is, Google search UDL theory and practice. It'll be the first thing that comes up. So thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions you happen to have. You can email me at Christopher.Hromalik. It's Hromalik is my last name. So Christopher.Hromalik@suny.edu. Same thing through SUNY, Christopher.Hromalik at SUNY.edu. www.christopherhromalik.com is my personal webpage, and then the UDL City Project, www.suny.edu/UDL, and there are links to all of these on the PowerPoint. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I will copy and paste the link to PowerPoint into the chat before I leave today, in case anyone would like to download that. But I can take any questions that haven't gone through the chat. It looks like maybe something that's. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the comment. Happy to take any questions that happen as well. Thank you.